Hey, what's going on, fellas? Got the run defensive series starting here. We're going to work on how to stop the run in Madden, but first, I have to put this video out. I just want to go over some of the basics on the defensive side of the ball and how we call the alignments of where everybody stands in the front. Okay, so that's your defensive line, including your linebackers. And then also just some of the lingo that I'm going to use. So when I go through the video and I'm talking about defensive fronts and where people are standing, you understand what I mean. Okay, so let me just go on to this next part here. Okay, here. So this is kind of the nomenclature of how we're going to call things here. We have an offensive line here. We can see everybody is listed there. And then at the very bottom, we have something called gaps, okay? So what you see here with the gap system, this is pretty much as we go through and talk about, where somebody is playing, what gap they have. It's pretty much just an idea of where where they're standing from the defensive point of view, all right, and an offensive point of view, and what gap are they attacking? Okay, are they attacking the A gap? Are they attacking the B gap? All right, so those things are going to come up. So as we go along, you see here they got the A gap between the center and the guard, B gap is between the guard and the tackle, C, okay, and then D is outside over here, outside of the tight end. Okay, if we wanted to, we could call something an E gap on the outside. All right, but again, that's just the space between the offensive players, and that's going to become important because we're going to say, hey, is there a defensive guy who's an A gap player, a B gap player, who has the C gap? We're going to talk about that when we get through. All right, so let's just go back now and look at the top where we have what we call the techniques. Okay, so the technique is the positioning of the defensive player and how he aligns his body over the offensive player that's across from him. So when we start with a zero technique, means that the defensive player has his head directly aligned with the center. All right, so he's directly across from him. If they both had stripes in their helmets, you would see his head basically be directly aligned with the center's head. Okay, so that's his body positioning over the center. We call that a zero. Then we continue on with our numbers. Sometimes they call it a zero shade, but really one technique is the most common term, meaning that the defensive player is basically, his head would probably be aligned on the shoulder, the outside shoulder of the center. Or sometimes my inside shoulder pad on the defense would be aligned on the outside shoulder pad of the offender of the offensive player. Okay, so that's called a one technique. All right. As we go along, a two technique is head up, directly across from the guard. Then we use terms. We put an I next to terms from this point forward, talking about if he's inside shade of the guard. So again, my shoulder pad's going to be aligned off the inside shoulder of the left guard. Okay, so you're not directly in the gap necessarily, but it depends on how, the split of the offense. Sometimes guards are very close to the center. So basically when you get aligned, you're just trying to get your shoulder pad to match up on the shoulder pad of the next player. So that continues on. The next word is the three technique. Again, so you can see how the system goes. You got these odd numbers on the outside shade of the guard. So 3 is on the outside shade of the guard. 4 is head up on the tackle. 4I is inside leverage of the tackle. 5 is outside leverage of the tackle. Okay, this is where it gets a little funky in the NFL. For some reason, I don't know who did this, but we have the 6 technique that follows the pattern, right? That means head up on the tight end. But for some reason, they called it a 7 technique. I'm not sure why. Inside leverage of the tight end, okay? My shoulder pad, my outside shoulder pad is going to be aligned on the inside shoulder pad of the tight end, okay? And then we have a 9 technique, which is the outside leverage of the tight end, okay? As we go along, some people do use wide 9 techniques, which is the same thing as being, if there was a ghost extra tight end, as you see there on the screen down here. Let me just kind of draw on the screen real quick. So yeah, if you see over here, there's a ghost tight end over here, okay, or an extra tight end might be there. Wherever you would line up, head up on that guy is pretty much the equivalent of what we would call a wide 9 technique. Sometimes you'll see in football, that guy won't even be on the screen. He'll be way off the screen, okay? A lot of teams who run the wide 9, the 49ers, the Texans, the Jets, you're going to see that more often. Okay, so that's the techniques. Again, this is important in Madden because when we start watching how people are aligned on the offensive guy, are they really like head up on him, or are they inside leverage? That's going to make a big difference depending on the run play, on how successful the defensive player is going to be in order to maintain his gap control. Okay, so we'll talk about that more obviously once we start the videos and we start talking about the defenses. Okay, so let's start with the 3-4 over system. 3-4 over, all right? It's a 3-4 system. We have 4 linebackers, we have 3 defensive linemen, okay? We're gonna have 2 outside linebackers always on the line of scrimmage in a 3-4 system, and we're gonna have 2 inside backers in the box. The only thing that would make an outside backer have to walk out of the box is some sort of wide receiver, okay? But let's just talk about that. Most 3-4 teams have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage all the time, okay? So these 5 guys need to get lined up according to the formation. So when the formation comes out, the linebackers are going to find the 3 surface or 4 surface side, wherever there's more offensive players on the opposite side of the center. So the center is over here, okay? And what we do is usually count out what surface it is outside the center. So 1, 2, 3, okay? That's more than 1, 2. And they even have a 4th guy over here. Okay, so that's going to tell the linebackers to call a right call. Now, in general, most linebackers are just going to look for the tight end. Right now, we have a jumbo tight end over here. Okay, this is actually an offensive lineman. And then we have another tight end outside of it. So it's an easy right call, right strength, rip, whatever the words that you use. So let's talk about the outside linebackers here. Depending on the defensive call, let's just assume it's a cover 1 and both linebackers are blitzing, okay? But in general, even if it's a call where one of these guys have to be in coverage, they have to have a run gap, okay? Their run gaps in this defense are off the outside edge of the defense, depending on who's in front of them, all right? So right now, let's use our technique talk. Von Miller is kind of in a wide 5 technique, but he's off the outside shade of the offensive tackle, okay? And he has C gap. Now, when we talk about the gaps also, we use another word, weak or strong. Sorry about the writing there. It's horrible. Weak or strong, okay? So Vaughn is away from the run strength, so he's a weak side C gap player, okay? And he's aligned in a 5 technique. Over here, Ware, okay, is a strong side D gap player. He's in the D gap because he's outside leverage of the tight end, okay, and he's aligned in a 9 technique, so he's pretty much outside of him. He could be even a little bit wider depending on this picture. All right, so this is important again as we go through the Madden game. I'll talk about guys and say, you know, you see the 5 technique or you need a 3 technique on this play. You know that you need a body, somebody a position over the offensive player in a certain fashion, okay? Now, let's go through the meat and potatoes of this. So, in the 3-4 defense, your adjusters are usually your interior players. So in the 3-4 system, you have 3 of them. This is your defensive line, okay? So our right on-screen defensive end right now, okay, when he hears over, he knows, okay, I'm always on the right side of the defense, that's fine. But when it's an over front, that tells me to line up in the B gap, strong, okay, and be in a 3 technique, which is outside shade of the guard. That's how he aligns. And his gap responsibility is the B gap, strong, okay? And then it tells our nose tackle. So in a 3-4 system, there's always an interior nose tackle, okay? His job is to either pretty much play on either side of the center, depending on the call. So in an over system, he's gonna play in the weak side A gap, okay? And he's gonna be, again, really kind of in that 1 technique position that we talked about, but he's in a weak side 1 technique. Does that make sense? All right, so those are the 2 major players in the interior that always have to adjust. Now, in a 3-4 system, we do have an extra linebacker over here, and I'm sorry, extra defensive end. And he knows that because in his system, depending on what's happening with the outside linebacker, okay, if the linebacker's on the line and coming, then most likely he needs to be what? A weak side B gap player. All right, where is he going to line on the defense right now? Well, he's not going to line out here because Von Miller, he's not going to be in a 5 technique. So he's going to move down to a 4 technique, or sometimes the 4-eye technique, which is inside shade of that tackle. All right, so he has the weak side B gap. So one of the defensive ends in this system usually has to adjust, and it's going to be either one depending on the call. He's either usually going to be in a 5 technique if there's nobody really outside of him, or going to be in a 3. He's either going to be that or a 4 technique, right? Or he might be a 3 technique. Okay, so we talked quickly about the interior players here. The 3 interior players in a 3-4 system, they have to be versatile, but especially these defensive ends. That's the reason why in Madden they're about like 280 to like 300 pounds, and they're usually very athletic. They're strong. They're kind of what we call tweeners. So if it was a 4-3 system, they would be defensive tackles, but they would be pretty much athletic defensive tackles. Even if they are a huge guy, they have some big ends. You know, teams that play for like people that play for like the Patriots, but they have to be agile enough to be able to go up against tackles and guards. Okay. Because depending on the system, they might be aligned over either one. All right. So let's go on now. Let's just quickly talk about the interior linebackers. We're not going to go over the run system of 1 back, 1 gap right now, but in general, all right, day 1 teaching for most teams, if you're a 1 back system, is to align the linebackers in the open gaps. Okay, so a quick review: Vaughn has weak side C. This player here, the defensive end, has weak side B. Weak side A. So there's no gaps right now against this front to worry about. All right. This defensive end has the weak side B. Where has the D gap on the outside? Okay. So what's open? A gap is open strong, and then we have C gap open strong. So these linebackers will move over, okay, and they will boss over. That's the word that people will use. It just means usually backers over strong, okay? They will not just be in their original home alignments, as you see maybe in Madden in the 3-4 defense. They're always just pretty much over the guards. They will actually move over depending off the formation look, okay? And depending on where their gaps are, where they need to get to. So just understand all that. So that's the over front. This would be the 3-4 over. If you play a 4 down defense, it would be called 4-3 over walk, I think. So just understand that, and that's pretty much the reason why I spent a lot of time on this one. Is this is kind of like the meat and potatoes of defense when it comes to most defenses play an over front majority of the game. Why? Because when we get to some of the other things, the nickel system is pretty much built out of the over front as well. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the next one here, again, this is a good example here. What you're looking at right now is a dime 2-3-6 defense, okay? Dime 2-3-6 in Madden out of the 3-4 systems, okay? But if you look at the orientation of this is no different if you call nickel 2-4 or nickel normal. So we're going to learn pretty much one of the meat and potatoes of the defenses that you're going to be playing a lot of the time. But again, it's based out of the over system. So when you get into the nickel and dime sets, the easiest way to get lined up and play is to use the over system to get your defensive line straight, okay? It helps the linebackers, it helps the nickel, it makes it really simple, and I'll explain why as we go. But in this system here, so the nickel system, we're gonna have 4 guys on the line of scrimmage, okay? That's pretty much how it starts with most nickel packages. Now there are some with 5, right? But they're gonna be based a little bit more out of the odd package, which we'll talk about later. But for the most part, a nickel system is going to be based out of the over package. So here, those are our 4 guys that are down, right? Now let's take a look at the run strength. Where's the tight end? He's on the right side, okay? So that's a right run straight. We're going to call rip, all right? That's the word that most people use. Tells that now our interior players now know how to line up. So our edge players are easy, right? They have the outside edge, right? Vaughn right now is a 9 technique going into the D gap, okay? And then we have our backside backer, Shaq Barrett, going through the C gap, weak, all right? Now, in this defense, there's only 2 guys in the interior that have to really adjust to according to the front call. So to the right-hand side, our right interior player, so this is our sub package rush DT, okay? And then this is the other one over here, all right, in Madden World. They're going to align according to the call. So 3 technique in the strong side B gap to the right side. This guy's going to align 1 technique in the weak side A gap, okay? So that's how it starts, and it's that simple, all right? These are our gaps. These are our gaps. I won't go over the linebacker gaps necessarily right now, but just in general, Our inside backers are either going to be A gap, B gap players. To on the one side of the center, there's going to be an A gap open or a B gap. Find it and play it. Same thing on this side. Okay, so yeah, I used to have to coach the safeties, and we had TJ Ward in this package, as you see, coming down here playing linebacker in this defense, because this is no different than dime 2-3-6. Most 3-4 teams like that because they usually have one athletic linebacker like we have here, and he stays on the field all day and he makes the calls, and they usually have another thumper that really may not be that guy. So you usually take one of your safeties and make him, if he's a bigger safety, a good run and hit safety, you put him down there. But this is, again, a passing situation. This is not on first and second down. We never ran this stuff, really, unless we knew a team was going to be passing. But that's the over system, okay, based out of the nickel dime package that you're going to see a lot in Madden. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one's pretty simple. This is just a wide front. So this would be like nickel wide, okay? Wide for this is talking to the interior players, our two rush tackles. They're going to align in 2-3 techniques, outside shade of the guard, right? And they're going to rush to B gaps. Easy. Our outside edge players are coming off the edge, all right? So that's something that you use. This is an empty formation. You see there's nobody in the backfield. So you might use it here versus a quarterback that we know can't run, right? But also we might use it in a passing situation just to get some better angles. And usually when this happens, you're going to get all types of like D-line games. They're not gonna just rush the outside edge all the time. You're gonna get some different type of movement with your D-line. But this is called in Madden nickel wide. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, now let's talk about the under system. So we pretty much got to the over system. Now the under system, the way it's taught, is the opposite kind of sort of. If you were a 4-3 team, it's a little bit easier, but for a 3-4 team, it's going to be easy too. All right, so let's start with our edge guys. Okay, we don't see the other guy right here, but there is an edge guy coming off the edge over there. He's just lined really wide. All right, so they're doing the same job, edge of the defense, 9 technique here, 9 technique here, nothing crazy. Where's the 3 surface side of the offense? Center is here. You got 1, 2, 3 players on this side, 1, 2 on this side. Obviously now the tight ends to the left, you know that it's a left call. All right, so linebackers will come out there and say Liz, okay, which will now tell your 3 interior players what to do. So our left on screen defensive end right now, there's a tight end to this side. So most defenses will still have him in that C gap. He'll be a 5 technique player off the outside shade of the guard. But in this case right now, it looks like from game plan sometimes we have him in a head up 4 technique. Okay, and which could be, he can go inside or outside, and the linebacker would obviously do the opposite. But in general, he's a 4 technique right now, but he could be a 5. Okay, let's just skip over, or let's go right to the inside player. So the nose tackle, again, remember I said he's going to play on either side of the center in a 3-4 system. So now he's aligned where? On the outside shade of the center. So that's a 1 technique. He's an A-gap strong player. Okay. And then our other guy on the backside, our weak side, or our right of screen defensive end, okay, he can play different styles here, but in an under system, he usually plays a 3 technique, and that's the gap that he's going to hit. That's the weak side B gap. And this is a big player here in the under system, okay? The 3 technique, just in general, is usually probably, you try to put your more athletic guy there in a 4-down system. You usually have a tackle that just travels, and is always going to be the 3 technique. In a 3-4 system, again, like I talked about, these defensive ends got to be versatile enough to play over guards or to play over tackles, okay? So that's where you're at with the 3-4 system. And then obviously we have our 2 linebackers, okay, playing the gaps that we talked about before. Now, this linebacker has a gap here, okay, but sometimes there are times where there's probably multiple receivers out this way and they have a pass responsibility, okay, but if the ball was to be run, he would probably fold right back in the A gap, all right? So that's just to give you a good old one back read. There are other systems out there where the linebackers will just stack behind the defensive tackles, more like in that Fangio system, and their play ball, and they can fall back into either A gap or whatever gap is outside. But we're not going to talk about that right now. That's more of a scheme thing. We just want to make sure we understand where players are aligned. So the under system, again, what is it? You're going to get your center here. You're going to get that one technique strong, okay? And you're going to get that three technique weak, the opposite of an over system. All right, let's go take a look at this last slide. So this last one here is an odd one, okay? This is not, I couldn't find a regular 3-4 odd. So this is actually a nickel or a dime odd. You obviously see Von Miller over here. You got Marshall over here. It's crazy. But this is more of a passing formation, passing team, passing down. We're trying to get a pass rush, okay? So right now we have Von Miller in a 0 technique, okay? And then in most odd defenses, you're gonna have your 2 interior players, either head up in a 4 technique, or a 4-eye, okay? That's what you're gonna get most of the time, but obviously this is a funkier front. We got them outside in the 5, because most likely they're probably gonna rush inside. They're gonna do something like that. Again, this is a passing down situation. And then you got your 2 edge players coming off the edge. But the thing about an odd front in general is that you usually have the centers covered up, head up with the 0 technique. These 2 tackles usually have some sort of player over them, either a 4 or 4-eye. And then you have 2 edge players aligned on the line of scrimmage in 9 techniques, okay? And just because I keep drawing lines that they're coming up, I'm really giving you their run gaps. They could be dropping out as well. But I just want to let you know that's if it's a run, that's where they're going to go, okay? So that's pretty much the over-under system, a little bit of nickel mixed in there, and then the odd package as well. So as we go through and I start talking about defenses, you guys will be on the same page with me. You'll know exactly what I mean about what technique is the guy. And it makes a big difference in Madden because there are times where if a guy is inside shade technique, even though he could be playing the same gap, okay, he could be outside shade of a guard playing B gap, or he could be playing inside shade of a tackle playing B gap. It makes a difference sometimes in where he's leveraged and how effective he's going to be at stopping some runs, okay? All right, guys, look forward to doing this series. Guys on my Patreon, you'll start getting these videos soon. Anybody else want to join that Patreon, jump on in there, getting real football talk from a real football coach. Just trying to help you guys understand Madden a little bit better so that when you play the game, you understand why you're winning and why you're losing, all right? And then we can always talk about it and try to figure out how does it work in the Madden world, and we can go from there, all right? Thank you, guys. I'll talk to you later, man. Peace.